information about the female Nolan allegedly stayed behind to holler at and find out what happened there. All right. So the girl's name is Katie. And what happened with Katie? We've got this article here that talks a little bit about some of what's being reported happened while Nolan was on the island. So the mystery deepens when looking at a conflicting accounts given by people who were last seen with Nolan. His friends claim they returned to the mainland without him because they believed he caught a ride with someone else. Meanwhile, a girl named Katie, who Nolan was seen talking to on the island, assumed he left with his original group. Again, this is something that I mentioned. It's like maybe everybody just left and didn't realize Nolan was there by himself. That's possible as well. This devastating communication breakdown left Nolan entirely alone on the dangerous barrier island, allegedly. Public outrage quickly sparked after fingers were immediately pointed at Wells' friends. Internet sleuths began whispering about the group's dynamics, with one commenting, "Sounds fishy to me. 3-1? That's all I'm going to say." Another worried observer chimed in online, writing, "Seen this story way too many times. Investigate all three boys and the girl. Something is..."
Katie McCormack says she watched Nolan Wells get on that boat. His friends say he never got on. Both statements cannot be true. And somewhere between those two versions of the same moment, an 18-year-old ended up dead. His body was found face down on the shore of Horn Island 2 days after the 4th of July. No witnesses have publicly reported seeing him after 4:30 in the afternoon. Think about what that means. An island packed with hundreds of people. Phones out. Everyone recording. Fireworks. Boats. Parties. And after 4:30 p.m., Nolan Wells vanishes from every camera, every photograph, every witness account for 38 hours. This is not just a drowning case. This is the story of a gap in time, a gap in testimony, and a gap in evidence that still has not been closed. There are 2 videos showing what appears to be the same boat at different times with different people aboard. There are 2 autopsies. One came back undetermined. The other is sealed. And there are 2 completely contradictory versions of what happened in the final minutes before that boat left Horn Island without Nolan Wells. Somebody is not telling the truth. I'm diving into the Nolan Wells case. And what you're about to hear is built entirely on documented evidence, witness statements, and publicly available records. Every claim has a source. Every gap in the story gets named, because the truth matters, especially when an 18-year-old is dead and the people closest to him can't agree on what happened. Let's start with the contradiction that sits at the center of everything. Katie McCormack is 19 years old, from a town just east of Ocean Springs, Mississippi. According to her sister Gracie, Katie says Nolan told her he was getting back on the boat with his friends. She assumed he got on. She assumed the people he came with wouldn't leave without him. But the friends, the ones who arrived on that boat with Nolan, tell a different story. They say he chose to stay behind. They say he wanted to talk to Katie. They say he didn't get on. One of those versions is a lie. Attorney Ben Crump, who represents Nolan's family, said it plainly at a press conference. She's saying he went and got on the boat. They're saying he didn't get on the boat. So which is it? Then he said what might be the most important sentence spoken publicly about this case. Somebody must not be telling the truth. That's not speculation. That's simple math. 2 stories. 1 outcome. They can't both be right. Now, here's what makes this even more complicated. Katie McCormack has not been accused of any wrongdoing. Nolan's family has publicly supported her. That matters, because in cases like this, it's easy for people to point fingers at the last person seen with the victim. But the people who loved Nolan, the people who buried him on July 20th, have stood by Katie. What they're questioning is the group, the friends, the people who got back on a boat they knew was failing and left an 18-year-old behind. If this is your first time here on Reopened Crime Scenes, this is what we do. We walk through active investigations, step by step, using primary sources and verified evidence. We don't deal in rumors or reaction videos. We look at what can be proven, and we name what can't. If you want more breakdowns like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now, because this case has layers we're only beginning to peel back.
Here for a Nolan Xavier Wells update, and just Bree, or Bree Lee, here on TikTok. Check out her videos. She just went around Ocean Springs and started exposing how many cameras are everywhere. So check out some of this footage. You can see there's cameras on the water. There is cameras at these houses. There is cameras on the pier. There is cameras on these bridges. So the point is, there's cameras on the dock where they pulled up in Fort Bayou. The point is, where is all of this footage? Why are these businesses not coming forward? Maybe they have come forward and we as the public just don't know. Of course, this is all on the ledge of allegedly, as we know. But thank you to Bree. And Bree, please keep doing the Lord's work and show us where all these cameras are. She even said there were cameras on Horn Island, right? I mean, because it's around there. So the point is, some of these cameras had to have seen something. We still haven't seen footage of Nolan coming back. If he did, maybe everybody's saying he was left on the island, by himself to just swim back? Does that make any sense?
Now let's talk about what the cameras actually captured. There are two pieces of video footage, and they raise more questions than they answer. The first video was reported by TMZ. It was recorded on Horn Island at 11:17 in the morning on July 4th, before the island got crowded. At the end of that clip, a boat called Mac Daddy comes into view. That boat appears similar to the vessel seen in a second piece of footage, which metadata shows was recorded later that afternoon at 2:23 p.m. In that second video, a young man wearing swim trunks that match what Nolan was photographed in earlier that day can be seen aboard the boat with friends. So now you have two timestamps, 11:17 a.m., 2:23 p.m., both potentially placing Nolan on or near the same boat. But here's the problem. Neither video has been independently verified by law enforcement. Officials have not publicly confirmed that the boat shown in either recording is the same vessel connected to Nolan's disappearance. And here's the detail that should make you pause. The newly surfaced 11:17 footage appears to show a different group of adults aboard than those in the later video. A different group of adults on what looks like the same boat, hours apart. That's not a minor inconsistency. That raises questions about who else had access to that vessel, who was coming and going, and whether the boat's full movement pattern that day has been accounted for. The person who recorded the 2:23 p.m. video felt strongly enough that it could be Nolan, that they walked into the Jackson County Sheriff's Office and handed a copy to a detective working the case. This wasn't just someone posting a clip online. This was someone who thought they had evidence. Now let's talk about the boat itself, because this is where things get darker. In audio released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, one of the teens aboard the Mac Daddy can be heard calling a private towing company.
Detail assistance, Vicky speaking. How can I help you?
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can you all please come? We have a membership.
All right, of course. How far is the work coming up, sir? Can you give me a description? Ankles? Hello?
Hey.
Yes, how far is the water coming up, sir?
It's coming up. We're just sinking. I don't know. We're going down now.
All right, well, let's get you going. Membership number or phone number listed on the account, sir?
I don't know the phone number. It's either, I think it's, try that.
All right.
I know we have a membership, guaranteed. I don't have the tag on
unless you
here.
have a membership number or anything, it's okay. I'll get you over to the captain. What's the best phone number to reach you at?
The voice says, "Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can you please come?" They knew the boat was in trouble. They knew it was taking on water, and they left Horn Island anyway, without Nolan Wells. One of Nolan's friends, Trican Shepherd, has spoken publicly about what happened.
I want to come to you because you're his friend. You were on the island on the 4th. You were on a different boat. Do you recall seeing him at all that day?
Yes, ma'am. I did see him when I was out there on the island.
Can you tell me what you saw? Does anything seem strange to you about the difference that people are saying of how he was separated from the group?
No, ma'am. I don't think that Nolan would say, hey, bro, I'm staying with this girl on the island.
He said he left the island with his uncle after getting into an altercation with some people. He said he feels guilt. He wonders if staying behind could have changed things. He wonders if he could have convinced Nolan to come back with the group. That doesn't sound like someone hiding something. That sounds like someone carrying the weight of a decision they can't undo. But guilt and truth are two different things. The question isn't whether they feel bad. The question is, who made the call to leave Nolan behind? Was it his decision, or was it theirs? Nolan's parents have been clear about one thing. They do not believe their son would have voluntarily separated from his group. His father, Elmore Wansley, said at a press conference.
Elmore Wansley, father.
Okay, so the situation with the key. When we got to the house, a few of his friends, they were already there. And they were at the door in the house asking questions. So when I walked up, they were getting, things were getting kind of intense. So I turned to them and told them, I need you guys to calm down. I don't do this to me right now. I need them to kind of trust me so they can give me something. So I was able to calm them down. So the guy, he's in one of the pictures. He came out of the room, half asleep or whatever, I think Jack's or whatever. And I said, look, I'm Nolan's father. I'm here to get his keys so I can get his car. I said, he's right. His car's parked in the yard. So he was like, I don't know, man. I know he's like my brother. I said, well, if Nolan was like your brother, would you please go in your room and see if we can find my son's keys so I can take his car home? He walks off, 2 or 3 minutes, come back. I can't find the keys. I said, okay, so at that point, I get the boys and I get to move them out the house because I didn't want them to go into the house and start tearing up these people's houses because they'd never be a whole in the situation. So we walk outside by the car. One of the guys that was in the house with us, he was on the phone with a girl, and the girl told him that Nolan's keys were on top of this Jack's guy's Xbox in the house because apparently she was there with him earlier. So he goes back up to the door by himself, and 5 minutes later, the keys come out. So now I feel like you done lied to me. So now I'm really like in distress with you. But as far as the night goes, if I knew anyone who had a boat, I would have went out that night looking for my son. We tried, but I don't have friends with boats. But if I knew someone with one, I would have went out that night. And it so happened that his coach saw all the stuff on Facebook that next morning and contacted me at like 5 in the morning, asked me, did we want to go out? And I told him yes. So within an hour, he was at the dock. We met him, and we went out. We docked the boat, got off the boat, walked on the island, walked a pretty nice stretch, came back, got back on the boat, went around the island, looked, came back around, and where we went to, that's where apparently they say that his body floated up. I don't know a lot about water currents or whatever, but I would think that we would have saw his body. And on the trip there was a family that stayed a night on the island, like actually tented out on the island. So if he was left, he would have saw that family on the island, and it was 2 other boats docked, so he would have had help. So I don't know. I don't know. I think we stayed there for like an hour and a half. That's when Jackson County and the sheriff department showed up, and they were going to do their rounds. And I had a classmate of mine, him and his 2 boys, they came out and they searched, and then they got back in touch with me and said the Coast Guard had finally showed up in airplanes. So that
What is so critical, what Elmore is saying is they went out on Sunday and the time, if it brought his body up, he went missing on July 4th, and they say his body should have been there on July 5th. Why would it not appear to July 6th? And that's one of those things that's just not adding up.
We always taught him, if you go with a group, you stay with the group. If you go with 5, you come back with 5. Do not separate from the group. He always said, yes, sir. So he knew to stay with his group. That's a father speaking from experience, not speculation. He's telling you how he raised his son. So now we have a window, a gap in the timeline that no one has been able to fill. Nolan Wells was last seen around 4:30 in the afternoon on July 4th. His body was discovered on the morning of July 6th by a park ranger. That's approximately 30 to 8 hours. And in that entire stretch of time, there is no confirmed phone activity, no verified sightings, no video, no photographs, nothing. Crime scene investigator Cheryl McCollum reviewed the case and said something that cuts through all the noise. There were hundreds of people out there. You've seen the video and the photographs. How somebody did not see him is pretty shocking to me, especially if he left one group that knows him to go with another group that clearly knows him. She's not accusing anyone. She's simply pointing out the statistical improbability. Hundreds of people, everyone filming, and somehow nobody caught Nolan on camera after early afternoon. About 60 witnesses have been interviewed as investigators piece together Nolan's final hours. 60 witnesses, and still no confirmed sighting after. 4:30 p.m. What does that tell you? Does it mean he was alone? Does it mean he was somewhere the cameras weren't? Or does it mean the people who saw him haven't come forward yet? Now let's talk about what was found, because there's been confusion, contradiction, and some troubling details that don't fit the picture of a simple drowning. Todd Terrell, president of the United Cajun Navy, initially stated that Nolan was discovered fully clothed on a barrier island in July, after an afternoon of swimming and partying. That didn't make sense. Attorney Ben Crump questioned why Nolan would be fully clothed when he was last seen shirtless, shoeless, and in swim trunks. Terrell later clarified that Nolan was wearing only his swim trunks. Brian Trasher, a vice president with the Cajun Navy, confirmed he observed the body from the air, and that Nolan was visibly wearing only swim trunks that matched the photos taken earlier that day. So that particular discrepancy seems to stem from miscommunication, not from what was actually found. But it raised a much bigger question. If the initial report was wrong about something as basic as clothing, what else might have been misunderstood or misreported? The family commissioned an independent pathologist to conduct a second autopsy. That pathologist found unexplained discoloration on the back of Nolan's head. The official coroner, Bruce Lind, said there were no obvious signs of physical injury. But discoloration and obvious injury are not the same thing. Discoloration can happen after death. It can happen from positioning in water. It can also happen from impact. Here's what we know for certain. The state medical examiner retained Nolan's throat tissue for additional testing. You don't retain tissue in a straightforward drowning. You retain tissue when something needs a closer look. When the first examination doesn't give you a clean answer. The independent autopsy came back with a cause of death, listed as undetermined pending investigation. The state autopsy is complete, but the results have been sealed. On July 23rd, District Attorney Angel Myers McRath confirmed the autopsy report will be sent to a grand jury and withheld until that review is complete. The DA said this is standard procedure. Every death in the county, except those from natural causes and non-criminal car wrecks, gets presented to a grand jury. But here's the question Nolan's family is sitting with. If this really is just a drowning, Why does the evidence need to be sealed? Why can't they see the official results for their own son? The legal answer is that releasing evidence before a grand jury reviews it could compromise the integrity of the investigation. That's defensible from a procedural standpoint. But emotionally, for a mother and father who buried their child, it's a different story. Nolan's mother, Christine Wells Wansley, said it herself. There's so many people out in the public asking all of these questions, but the only question that we have is what happened to our son. That's not a political statement. That's not a legal argument. That's a mother asking the most basic question a parent can ask. And right now, she doesn't have the answer. Neither do we. What we do have is a gap. A gap between 4:30 p.m. on July 4th and the morning of July 6th. A gap between what Katie says and what the friends say. A gap between the independent autopsy and the sealed state report. And in that gap, the truth is hiding. This case is still active. The grand jury review is pending. More evidence could surface. More witnesses could come forward. If you want to follow this case as it develops, make sure you're subscribed to Reopened Crime Scenes and hit the bell so you don't miss updates. Because when that grand jury convenes, we're going to know whether this was a tragic accident or something else entirely. In part 2, we're going deeper into the investigation, the timeline contradictions, and the questions law enforcement still hasn't answered. Until then, stay curious, stay critical, and never stop asking questions. The state medical examiner kept Nolan Wells's throat. They performed the first autopsy. They removed tissue from his throat. And when the family's independent pathologist came in to do a second examination, that tissue wasn't there. The one part of the body he specifically wanted to inspect had been retained by the state. Think about what that means. The family paid for answers. They hired their own forensic pathologist, and the doctor conducting that second autopsy had to write his report, knowing he was working with an incomplete picture. He said so himself. He acknowledged multiple limitations in his findings. So the question the family wanted answered most. How did Nolan die? Came back with an answer they didn't expect. Undetermined pending further investigation. Not drowning. Not accident. Not homicide. Undetermined. Because the evidence needed to make that determination was being held by the state. Now, to be fair, retaining tissue during an autopsy is not unusual. Medical examiners do it for histological analysis, for microscopic examination, for toxicology. It doesn't automatically mean something sinister happened, but it does mean something didn't add up on the first pass. You don't retain tissue when everything is clear. You retain it when you need a closer look. And the independent pathologist, Dr. Roger Mitchell Jr., raised specific questions after his examination. How did Wells enter the water? Were there any neck injuries? Was there brain bleeding? And what was found in his stomach? Those are not generic questions. Those are targeted. Those are the questions of a doctor who looked at a body and said, "I need more before I can tell you what happened here." But he couldn't get more because the throat tissue, the part of the body that could answer questions about drowning patterns, asphyxiation or trauma, was kept by the state. And the results from that state autopsy are sealed. They'll be sent to a grand jury, but the family can't see them. Not yet. Maybe not for months. That's the wall this family is hitting at every turn. Not a refusal, but a delay. Not a denial, but a deferral. And if you're just joining this investigation, that's what we do here on Reopened Crime Scenes. We follow active cases through the evidence, the delays, the contradictions, and the gaps. We don't speculate. We don't react. We document. If you want to follow this case as it develops, hit that subscribe button now, because the updates are coming, and you won't want to miss them. Now, here's where that delay connects to something bigger. A newly completed independent analytical review of photographs, videos, GPS coordinates, and witness accounts concludes that the available evidence still leaves a material gap in the timeline between Wells's last independently corroborated sighting and the reported departure of the boat that brought him to the island. That's a 22-page report, and the conclusion is not a theory. It's not a suspicion. It's a documented, sourced, analytical gap in the evidence. The word material is important here. In legal terms, that means the missing information is significant enough that it could change the outcome of an analysis. It's not a minor detail. It's not trivia. It's material. And right now, no one has filled it. So you have a gap in the medical evidence. You have a gap in the timeline. And you have a gap in the witness testimony that still hasn't been reconciled. Katie McCormack says Nolan told her he was getting on the boat. His friends say he chose to stay behind. And now, more than a month after Nolan's body was found, two of those friends went back to Horn Island. Warren Hudson and Jax Pattelow returned to the island to investigate the layout and dynamic, according to their attorneys. Their lawyer said they were on the island for about 3 hours. It was a very emotional afternoon for Warren and Jax, the attorney said in a statement. Let me slow down here, because this is significant on multiple levels. These are two of the friends who were reportedly with Nolan that day. They've hired attorneys. Their lawyers say they are completely innocent young men who had nothing whatsoever to do with the tragic death of Nolan Wells. And now they're going back to the island with their legal team to look at the layout. So, what do you do with that information? On one hand, you could read it as transparency, as young men who want to help, who want to show they have nothing to hide, who are cooperating in their own way. On the other hand, you could ask why their attorneys need to see the island's layout if their clients simply left a friend behind who chose to stay. I'm not going to tell you which interpretation is correct. That's not my job. My job is to show you both and let you sit with it. But here's what I will say. Hudson, Pattelow, and a third individual named Seymour were part of a fundraiser claiming they have been targeted with death threats and defamation as the case intensifies. Their legal team is reportedly reviewing mainstream and social media coverage of Wells's death for allegedly defamatory statements. And they're not the only ones receiving threats. In the wake of Wells's death, his family and some families of those who knew the 18-year-old say they have received threats amid intense public scrutiny. 3 people, none of whom appear to know Wells, have been charged with threatening a witness, a judge, and local officials connected to the case. So now you have threats going in every direction. The family is getting threats. The friends are getting threats. A man from California was arrested for making a social media threat toward a Chancery Court judge who is the mother of one of Wells's friends. The Attorney General said they are cracking down on people making threats during the investigation. This is what happens when a case goes national before the evidence goes public. The vacuum gets filled with fury, and fury doesn't care about facts. It picks a side and attacks. And the people who suffer most are the people closest to the truth on all sides. Now let's talk about what the family is actually asking for, because this gets lost in the noise. They're not asking for a conviction. They're not asking for a specific person to be arrested. They're asking for a process that treats their son's death seriously. They're asking for transparency. They're asking for the information that any parent would want. At the funeral, Christine Wansley said her son had such a gentle, calming spirit about him. She described her 18-year-old as protective and nurturing, noting that he hoped to have 3 daughters one day. Think about that. An 18-year-old boy already dreaming about being a father, already thinking about the kind of dad he wanted to be. His parents described their son as a warm and gentle presence, a gifted athlete, and a role model to his younger siblings. He had a way of making people feel seen, welcomed, and valued, his mother said. His obituary says he especially disliked seeing his mother cry, and would do everything within his power to comfort her, and that his greatest gift was not found in his athletic ability or academic accomplishments, but in the kindness he freely gave. That's who we're talking about. That's who didn't come home. And what does justice look like for this family? Attorney Ben Crump said it directly. Until we get answers, until we get to truth, until we get to justice, we're going to stand up and we're going to keep ringing the justice bells for Nolan Wells. Reverend Sharpton said there's too many unanswered questions. We can't have someone in law enforcement saying there was no foul play before there was an investigation. And that, right there, is one of the sharpest criticisms leveled at this case. The authorities have been criticized after Sheriff John Ledbetter initially said they did not suspect foul play before the autopsy, before the grand jury, before 60 witnesses were interviewed. The sheriff's office signaled nothing to see here. Now, to be fair, the district attorney's office has since made clear this case is being treated as a priority. The Jackson County District Attorney's Office has said it will present the case to a grand jury once the Sheriff's Department investigation is complete. The DA's office said convening a grand jury does not mean there is any criminality, and is standard procedure for most unnatural or suspicious deaths in the county. So where does this case legally stand right now? Let me be precise. The official autopsy has been completed by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office. The findings will not be made public. Instead, the report will be presented to a grand jury as part of the ongoing investigation. The DA previously said withholding the report follows standard procedure. No one has been charged. No one has been named a suspect. No one has been named a person of interest. The investigation is active and ongoing, but Ben Crump's legal team continues to pursue its own investigation. Forensic audio specialists are reviewing the complete CTO emergency call from July 4th. And ocean engineering experts are examining how Wells's body came to be recovered near the northwestern tip of Horn Island. Notice that. Ocean engineering experts. Crump's team isn't just asking how Nolan died. They're asking how his body ended up where it was found. Because the currents matter. The tides matter. The position of the body relative to where he was last seen matters. Crump said at the National Urban League Conference that his team is working with oceanic engineering experts to examine how and why Wells's body was found in the same location where he was last seen. In the same location where he was last seen. If ocean currents would have moved a body and the body didn't move, that tells you something. If the body should have drifted and it didn't, that's a data point that needs explanation. We don't have that analysis yet, but Crump's team is building it. And that brings us to the community. Because this case has become bigger than one family, bigger than one island, bigger than one investigation. Wells's death has captured national attention, galvanizing black leaders and touching off fraught discussions of racial tension and mistrust of law enforcement in the Deep South. Among those in attendance at the funeral were director Spike Lee and former football player Terrell Owens. Tyler Perry helped pay for the funeral. Reverend Al Sharpton and Tyler Perry pledged $50,000 for information leading to an arrest and conviction. Byron Allen donated $100,000 to the family's fundraising campaign. And Colin Kaepernick funded the independent autopsy. This isn't just a local story anymore. This is a national conversation about accountability, about what happens when a young black man dies under unexplained circumstances in Mississippi, about whether the institutions tasked with finding the truth will actually find it. Sharpton invoked the history. The reason why a lot of people in the nation are looking at this Nolan situation is that we've looked at history in Mississippi. Some of us remember what happened in Mississippi, Sharpton continued. And whether you think race is central to this case, or incidental to it, the family has a right to ask the question. The community has a right to demand answers. And the investigation has a responsibility to be thorough enough that when those answers come, they're believed. Because here's what I keep coming back to. There are now multiple independent investigations running simultaneously. The Sheriff's Department. The DA preparing for a grand jury. Ben Crump's forensic team. And now the Friends' own attorneys doing their own site visit. 4 separate tracks, all converging on the same 38-hour window. And in the middle of all of it, one question that still hasn't been answered. Did Nolan Wells get on that boat, or didn't he? Katie McCormack says he was going to. His friends say he stayed. And somewhere between those two versions, an 18-year-old ended up dead on a shoreline. One of his friends told CNN something that sticks with me. I've never known Nolan to stay back while his friends leave. He's always been a guy where, if he rode with you, he's going to come back with you. That's always how he's been. Every single time. Until this time. His obituary said it best. To know Nolan was to witness goodness in its purest form. An 18-year-old kid who made his family salmon the night before he left, who hugged his parents, who kissed them goodbye, who dreamed about being a dad. And right now, his mother is waiting for a piece of paper from the state that will tell her how her son died. A piece of paper she's not allowed to see because it's going to a grand jury first. Christine Wells-Wansley said the only question that we have is what happened to our son. That is still the question. The grand jury will review the evidence. The forensic teams will finish their analysis. The oceanic engineers will report on the currents. The audio specialists will finish with the CETO call. And when all of that is done, either the gap gets filled or it doesn't. But this channel will be here either way. We will follow this case until there are real answers. Not theories, not speculation. Answers that are grounded in evidence and accountable to the truth. Because Nolan Wells deserved to come home on July 4th, and since he didn't, the least the system owes his family is the reason why. You've heard the contradictions. You've seen the footage. You know about the sealed autopsy, the retained throat tissue, the material gap, the friends going back to the island. So I want to ask you one thing, and I want you to really think about it before you type. What stands out to you most? Not what's loudest, not what's angriest. What stands out? What's the one detail in this case that you can't let go of? Drop it in the comments because the details that bother you might be the same ones that bother a grand jury. And if this case matters to you, if you believe Nolan's family deserves answers, then subscribe to Reopened Crime Scenes and stay with us, because we'll be back with updates as this case develops. And when the truth finally comes out, we'll be here to walk through it with you. Until then, stay curious, stay critical, and never stop asking questions.